was pleased to see that you all were getting into the discussions. It wasn't just I gotta post something and then I'm out of here, because your replies were pretty decent. So any comments or thoughts or anything about this so far?
Are we going to be continuing the discussion? Is it going to be just an ongoing thread?
Well, that's completely up to you, as if you want to continue that. But I'm not going to require all of you to go ahead and stay, checking it day by day. So if you were to post somebody's reply to somebody and you want to carry on a discussion with someone, you should let that person know by email, saying, "Hey, I put something up on the discussion board for you. I want to see what you think about it." You're welcome to do that. Not this week, but at another time, I will go back to that. Maybe I should rename the board, because then we could look at previous ideas and start new threads, and if we keep it all on that same forum, it might be at the end a very rich product. So I'm thinking now I probably will rename the forum to something like Philosophy Forum or something. So it's not just stuck on Descartes. By the way, please note what I'm asking you to do. And let's go ahead and skip the rest of this chapter, just so that we can move along. All right. Blackburn is a very good mix of an author who can address a popular audience. By that I mean non-professional, and as he's one of the most engaging writers I've seen on these in philosophy. But he also constantly reminds you that he's very well read and well versed, and he'll throw in rather technical objections. For example, his half page or page on the fact that it should be "it thunders" or "thunders," and that sort of thing. His willingness to engage another contemporary philosopher / academician in a popular text kind of betrays that sort of weight that he still. And if you were here in this room, I would mention that too. So I'm not, it's a cheap shot, right? When you take somebody's book and you just like poke holes in it, and then you're like, yeah, if the guy were here, would you really be saying that? Anyway, questions, comments, ideas, fears?
What do you mean by fear?
Yeah, I just threw it in there. Yeah, fears should. The idea is, if you really become, you see that our deliberations move you into belief on some issue, your emotions follow suit. And if you start believing a certain way about a certain thing, you might start fearing things. I don't know. Anyway, well, let's carry on. I don't want to spend this time necessarily discussing the book, because the book allows me a pretty good organizational principle when I'm trying to do these office discussions. Okay. By the way, I know it probably takes a good bit of patience to watch through those things. Thank you. Appreciate that. You got to really work at it. But I'm just saying everyone, But I'll tell you this: the willingness to learn the terms and the willingness to entertain seriously what superficially appears to be a dumb question, all right, is I think are key elements to train yourself in as far as developing this habit of thinking. So put some stuff on the board here. Yeah, I do roughly touch on the book a little bit on class, but we're going to talk about the elusive I now. Discussing mind-body dualism, that's the term dualism, you need to know that. Homunculus, he's going to refer to it as ghost in the machine, the little man in you that's hitting the ball or making that chemical react, whatever we called it last. The very first principle of change, right? And now some key questions, right? How do we know ourselves? Where do our thoughts come from? I think that in choosing Plato's Ion, I was trying to get you to think about that. Because we do recognize we have thoughts, but I'm asking you to watch them watch them spring up in your mind. Do you know where they're springing up from? Their presence in your mind is certainly clear to you. And now you can talk about, say, an associative principle, where you say, well, now I'm thinking about the cat that visited in my backyard the other day, because it was a calico cat and it had patches on it that resemble the the canvas on that bulletin board, that orange canvas over there. So, you can discuss that sort of thing, but that really doesn't answer the question as to where, in fact, are your thoughts coming from, right? And in this day and age, it seems to be a very a commonplace thing, which our duty would be to question the commonplace thing, okay? Not just merely as an exercise of reason, not necessarily because we genuinely are trying to convince ourselves we don't know anything, but we need to question this notion that thoughts arise from ourselves. In fact, maybe they come from an outside force. The notion of possession has a rich tradition, and just from a secular historical approach, it should not be dismissed out of hand. Because of the evidence that we have in the history that possession has occurred. The same notion with God. Any philosopher who refuses to think on God is just not worth the salt. Because how can you ignore an idea that has such a long time in history been playing? And if you seek to learn the history of this, you need to approach this. I don't care where you're from, or what institution you're involved with. Now let's come to the elusive I. Now Descartes, right, says it's just so clear. It's just so clear that thinking happens, or that I think, that I just don't doubt myself. That essential. Now, as far as whether or not I have a body, that can be doubted, right? But the fact that I exist can't be doubted. And then he also discusses. Now this is what the book calls his trademark argument, right? Did you understand that? Do you want to discuss that? Because that's going to show up if you take a class in apologetics, classical or presuppositional. The idea of the notion of perfection implies some origin, some cause for its existence, and the cause has to be at least equal to the notion in terms of its perfection. Actually, more so. So. In a very simplistic form, Anselm again raises that question too. What is your definition of God? Well, the perfect being. Well, what does it mean to be perfect? How can you say you're fully perfect if you don't exist?
I was
Go ahead.
thinking about this thing of how we've never seen perfectness in something, but then But I think that also can apply to, you can even bring it down to a low level of just what is better than something, even comparisons. It's like, if you eat ice cream and you think it tastes good, why do you think it tastes good? What if you don't have, it's like maybe that bad taste is actually what you should be enjoying. Maybe that's
now you're gonna find out as we progress through this class that quote unquote proofs, they're very, very few. And so your notion is, look, seriously, can't we just have two? One that's not so good and one that's better, and we realize the second one is being better because we desire it more than the first one, as far as like a perfect tomato. So now, and does it have to always move up to like, okay, we needed to have known the perfect tomato first before you're saying maybe can't we just know the concept of betterness instead of perfection? Because then that would, why don't we have like the movies in Hollywood, like what's one, Thor, he comes like thundering down with his hammer and so what's his weakness? I don't know. Doesn't he have a weakness? I guess his brother. I guess he's not as strong as his dad. I mean, I don't know what his weakness is. He had trouble with that machine or whatever for a little bit. He fell in love, maybe that's a weakness. But the idea is, well, why can't we have an imperfect God? I mean, why not? Why does God have to be perfect, right? So the notion is, where are we getting this desire to define God this way? And Alex, I don't want to try to tell you there's an answer to that. I mean, other than revealed truth, other than being hardwired for this, but there's a whole group of people that will say, well, we've never been hardwired. We've evolved, or we just aren't hardwired. We have some sort of autonomy over how we think, how we feel, and we can choose not to believe this or that. And well, that's a separate camp of people. But people are going to come and say, I don't think Descartes' trademark argument, as Blackburn calls it, holds much water, because couldn't we just have a notion of betterness instead of perfection? And seriously, are you going to tell me God has in his mind the notion of a perfect tomato? I mean, that's what people are going to say. Well, let's go cat food, perfect cat food. You know, so God has, and you know, this is not any new, but what about a perfect turd? You know, that Martin Luther, okay? Just read about him. Or yeah, are you seriously going to tell me God has the perfect notion of defecation and that lumpy thing there? Well, come on, how can that even be in God's mind? You know, so people will come at this argument this way, okay? But Descartes can come back and say, I'm talking about the abstracted notion of perfection. Where do you get that from? Because if it's only betterness, then your highest notion of it should be drawn from that thing that you've experienced, that of all the things you've experienced was the better of all of them. I don't want to say best because that's superlative, but seriously, look, if you think that the notion of betterness is at play here, how many of you have ridden on a really bad, you know, a roller coaster? I mean, it was just pathetic. You like, why did I wait in that line or whatever? And then can you remember like the one that you enjoyed the most? That you like, I'll do that again in a heartbeat. Well, how many have you experienced all the roller coasters in the world? So how do you know there's not one better than even that one? So in other words, if this whole notion of betterness is at play here, your notion of perfection then would be the top better. I mean, in your own personal experience, that one roller coaster that to you, of all your experiences, was better than all the others, you wouldn't be able to extrapolate from that to even imagine one better than that. That would take the placeholder of that which was perfect for you. So the very fact that you can imagine a better one, okay, it's like the white swan. I mean, no, I digress. I don't want to bring that in here, but think of a whole world of colorblind people, okay, and then think of in that colorblind world, blind people. Wouldn't the colorblind be able to say, well, we're in a better state? You know, or think of a colorblind person that can see 50 shades of, I don't want to say that, 30 shades of gray, okay? Think of someone who can see 30 grades of 30 grades of
Shades.
30 shades of gray. That was because the grades of word, okay? 30 shades of gray. I don't know how I got in here. But let's continue on, nevertheless. And they're like, I can see 30. You can see only 10. I'm better than you. I got great eyesight. Well, they've never seen color. They don't even know what color is. So why do they think they have perfect eyesight? They don't know. They've never experienced anything better. So in that sense, what they have experienced as their top experience takes on the notion of perfection for them. But we can always say, well, you know, that doesn't mean in reality that there's not something better. You just don't know about it yet. Yes?
If we can choose between better things, how do we know what's good? Like if better is relative.
Yeah, well, yeah. See, that's what Plato is going to say. Plato's going to say, for even to think of the concept of betterness, you got to know two things. One, equality, because you got to be able to put them in the same class. This is a better popsicle than the other one. We never compare like, oh, this is a great popsicle. This is better than my rowboat.
Right.
Just doesn't make sense to make those comparisons.
No.
Well, anyway, so you got to have the notion of equality first, that they are essentially the same thing as you're doing your definitions. And then the notion of, what do we call it? Betterness, hierarchy, quality, you know. And so Plato will say, you know, you've had this, you can't just think of this. You've had to have it a priori. Okay, now those are some terms I didn't get to in the videos, but you should know them, okay? A priori means before any experience, you've had this knowledge. A posteriori, okay, means this knowledge comes to you only after experience. A posteriori. And A is separated. There's a space. It's A and then post, and then ER, and then IORI. A posteriori, and then a priori means that which comes before any experience. You just have it in you. Now, Plato isn't going to say you're hardwired. He doesn't believe you come from the dirt. He says you fell from the perfect realm of forms. And that's where you learn perfection. And it may have been only a geometrical realm. See, so things might have been added in translation, not lost. And that's where my whole spiel about translation was coming from.
Are you saying then that good is something that you don't have to have an experience with to know good and perfection and betterness? That's also
you won't know how to articulate it until your first experience comes along. Just as a naturally born artist would never really even know it or be able to produce their first painting until he gets a canvas.
like
But it's in you.
Or how people describe colors. You can't describe colors if you were blind.
Yeah.
You can only describe it as red, as stone.
And so you have to have this faculty of sight first before even that becomes a possibility. So think of someone who has sight, but who has always kept his eyes shut for 30 years or whatever, and then finally opens it. Can he not see colors? Sure, he can see. He'll see it right away. So you might not know you have this potential until you have things to interact with, but it's in you from the beginning. That's what. Okay, let's go to the elusive eye. The question I have here for you, the perennial question, is how can you ever see yourself? Okay, and this ties into this notion of can you know yourself? And some ways I like to introduce this question when I just have discussed it before is think of your own eyeball. Has your eyeball ever seen itself
In the mirror.
in the mirror? But what is it then seeing?
Isn't it always a reflection?
It's always seeing through itself by virtue of its existence, by virtue of its virtue. Well, one thing you need to know about the word virtue is it used to mean power. Characteristic power. Okay, it had nothing to do with like morality and goodness and morality. But the eye's virtue is to see, right? But can it see itself? Well, and the way I would answer you, Maddie, is what do you think the eye, what kind of shape do you think the essential eye has physically? It's a round thing, right?
Yeah.
So are you seeing the round thing right now? So you're seeing through it, but I don't know if you're seeing the actual eye itself. In other words, if there were no mirrors, could you ever go to someone and say, hey, what color are your eyes? Tell me. I know what they are because I can see them. Can you tell me what color your eyes are? I don't think that person will ever be able to say that unless someone else has previously told them, oh, they're hazel or whatever. So,
So you don't know what color your eyes are?
Actually,
You
no,
don't?
I don't. I guess I digress. The point here is if you know what color your eyes are, someone either has told you this or you've seen it in the mirror, right? But can you see how the mirror is a mediated experience? It's mediated because you have to have the middle thing, the mirror. So what's coming back at you is a sign, right? It's a sign with photons because you take the photons away, you're not going to see in that mirror. So even then, you're not really seeing your eye, you're seeing an image of your eye, right? So how will you ever see your eye? How can you ever see it? Think of putting, let me cut out a shape here. I'm not going to tell you what shape it is. And then I'll paste it on the back of your head. And then I just want you, without feeling it, to try to see it. So that's the idea of the elusive eye. And my question to you is, why do you even think you know yourself? Well, I can reflect upon myself, right? So let's draw some pictures here. Because you just said I. Well, where's the eraser? I reflect upon myself. Oh, no, I think that's the... Okay, so here I am. In order for myself, the question here is, can you ever be an object of your own intelligence? Descartes said, he intimated you could, but if you look at his language, he never really, I don't think he ever actually comes out and says
What does
that.
that mean?
What?
An object of your own intelligence.
Well, can you ever, can you ever have your fullness, you, the complete you, in your mind and reflecting upon it?
Can you ever... Wait, so you're asking, can you ever imagine who you are exactly and then think about it? Is that what you're saying?
It's kind of hard to put this in the perfect wording, but hang on a second. Well, what would be your answer to the question worded that way?
Think about yourself. Well, it's hard because you're biased.
See, the thing is, the thing is, who's doing the thinking? If you're thinking about yourself, who's doing the thinking?
You are.
But how can you? In other words, if you reflect upon yourself, you're putting it on a table of reflection, so to speak. Okay? You're holding it at a distance and looking at it, right?
Yeah.
But then if now I can do that with my marker because I'm over here and the marker's there. But if I do that with myself, who's holding myself? I can't be because I'm all there.
Well, if you're thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your own, what you imagine.
Well, here, look.
Mind isn't limited by physical attributes.
Well, let's go like this. I am thinking.
It's like saying a blind person can't think because they can't see anything.
No, that's about sight. What's going on here is I am thinking about myself. Okay, is the whole complete object that you call yourself, is it right here in this placement? If you say yes, then who's over here?
I guess you're trying to ask what's the eye of the mind, because if we have a mirror that's reflecting, imagine like in a physical sense, if I'm standing and looking at a mirror, I'm seeing myself.
Yes, but that's not your eye.
Yes.
That's just a
It's a
reflection of eye.
reflection.
Right.
So if you're looking at yourself, are you actually like looking at yourself, or are you looking at a reflection?
Are you looking at a reflection?
Yes.
Okay.
Which means what is the eye of your mind? What is looking at the mirror? to
Right.
see
What is
itself?
what is evaluating that reflection of the eye? In other words, how? Let's think about it this way. How would you? Let's have a thought about ice cream right now. Tell me, what's your thought about ice cream?
Yummy.
Okay, it's yummy. Okay. Now the idea about thinking, okay, and I digress, but maybe it is connected to the elusive eye thing. The idea about thinking, and here's the notion, is that although you can intuit things, and although you can depend upon a sort of conviction about existence and characteristics beyond the senses, you can't actually have a thought until you're able to put it into words. Now, that's debatable. Personally, I am on that side. I don't think that you can think about something without being first, at the end, being able to articulate it into words. Which then I would have to say, I don't access colors by thinking. Okay. Because how do you define red?
What you saw.
What are you going to say? Warmness? Coolness? Danger? So what? But that's not, those are things that red is associated with by virtue of the conventional relationship drawn up by symbols.
If somebody says red, you should picture a color red.
Yeah, but the trouble with that is, how do you know that you're actually seeing the same red that other person is seeing? Think of the colorblind person. That to him, what you're saying red is actually a shade of green, as I understand it. And I don't even know that. Because frankly, I don't even know if there are any colorblind people, because I can't see what color they're seeing. All right. So what if, in other words, what if you were raised as a child and everyone wanted to play a trick on you? See, this is how you do philosophical analysis. You take these seemingly dumb scenarios, but I'm trying to carefully draw it up to highlight the dynamic that I want you to think about. What if everyone trained that child to think that color over there is known by the word red, that bulletin color? Okay, so that child for the whole lifetime is going to think that is what we call red until what?
Until someone else says.
Okay, until he meets someone else that says this is blue. So no, that's red. It's blue. And then how is that child ever going to solve this problem? He's going to at that point listen to the majority voices eventually and say, well, it's a pragmatic matter. If I call this blue, many people are misunderstanding me. I may as well just call it red. But what if the experiment went on for the whole life of the child and no one decided to correct it? Everyone played with it. Would he ever know what our red looked like?
See, it's our red. It's a language.
It's a language thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a language thing. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Even when it comes down to talking about it, you have to put it into language or put it into words. All right? As you do with thoughts. It's yummy. Okay, so that means whatever you reflect upon it, you use signage. That's what you have to use. Yeah.
What if someone who's never taught a language?
Okay, see that's interesting, because I don't think that's ever been the case as far as an experiment goes. I know Helen Keller started out some way. I don't know about Helen Keller, although she was taught a language.
There's a hand thing. There are some people like some people were like, there was this one girl who was like just locked up in a room for like the first 12 years of her life, and when she came out, like she was completely, like her mental capacity, she wasn't able to understand language after that point. Because
Yeah, what was her name?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's horrible. Yeah.
The trouble with this is that if you're going to do it empirically, like if you're going to look at that and say, let's draw general conclusions from it, you need more than one person.
Yeah.
And then no one wants to give up a child and say, okay, lock it up for 12 years so that we can have we need 20 of these so we can have like some, so we're ethically inclined never to carry out that experiment. But in order to answer that question, you need to carry out the experiment. So people are always like, where's that island where they don't talk at, or whatever. But I just don't think it, I think in fact, it's part of our,
But if everything we think is in language, if someone never learned a language, does that mean they couldn't think?
see, I can't answer that question. I would have to say yes. According to what I just told you, yes. Now, but then what I would respond to you is, do animals think? Or do they react to sensory data with some sort of...
I don't think animals react to anything that's not happening to them.
Okay, so then, yeah. So, but you realize you can think about things that are not present in the room.
What?
But I say you realize that you can think about things that are not present in the room, right? So can an animal think about a hot air balloon?
No.
Without seeing the hot air balloon?
No, it can't.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how you'd ever prove that, because you know what? Seriously, maybe all dogs understand English, and maybe they have just decided to pretend that they don't understand.
I think that they understand.
I'm talking about if you're going to go the route of proof. I don't know how you can ever get past that question. That's the black box issue. Okay, the black box issue. How do you know? Really? How do you know that animals can
It's
understand?
like dogs are colorblind, but we don't.
I don't know. How do they know that?
No one knows.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. How do they know that dogs are? Yeah.
You can tell what, like, generally what parts of the brain is firing. So you could check to see if there's any part of the...
And what are you assuming when that brain fires?
That it's intelligent.
I'm assuming that something has...
Well, you can never see the thought, though. You can never see the thought. Maybe it's a blank, I don't want... I'm not trying to present myself as an extreme devil's advocate, but seriously, the question is, the only way you're going to ever come up with data that way is to look at 100 brains that fire that way, and the people come back and say, I thought about ice cream. Okay? Then you go to that one person who can't articulate anything, and you watch the brain fire, and you say, that person's thinking about ice cream. But you're assuming that ice cream, the firing pattern for ice cream has only that signature.
Ah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, how do you know that person may be the defective person? The problem with this whole thing, and I've got to quit here, is it's going to be based on induction, and it can never answer the question of the black swan. Okay, I can't believe I mentioned this at the beginning, and now here we are back again at the black swan. Before 1735, I don't know the exact date, but there is an exact date to it. People assumed all swans were white because they had never seen a black swan. Lo and behold, a European explorer went somewhere in Florida. I don't know where he went. I'll find the data for you. Just Google it. And he found a black swan. And think of all the thousands of white swans people had seen before he found the black swan. So what I'm saying is you might even still look at the firing pattern, but that might be the black swan. How do you know that person is actually thinking about ice cream? So I guess what I'm trying to get you to think about is that, I got to end here, but I'll throw it out to you. Maybe we'll come back to it next time. Is one, you can't tell where thoughts are coming from, and two, you can never actually analyze yourself, because as soon as you try to analyze yourself, how do you do it? How do you hold it? If you put yourself on the table of signage to look at, because I'm saying that's the only way you can think at something reflectively, because obviously if you're reflecting upon it, it's not directly on you. Okay? So you're reflecting on it in an image or words or some sort of signage, and if you put yourself in signage, who's looking at the signs? If all of you is in signage. So there has to be like this hovering black dot of comprehension that's always willing to go one step back and look at it. Which means that you'll never know yourself, which actually accords with some very, closely held